Chapter 1 The Weight of Politeness. The waiting chamber hummed with low, alien frequencies that set Elias Veyer's teeth on edge. The walls shimmered faintly, alive with bioluminescent patterns shifting in slow pulses, as though the room itself were breathing. He straightened the cuffs of his dark diplomatic uniform, the earth crest catching the cold light. For a moment he studied his reflection in the obsidian glass, a man of 38, with the faintest lines carved by battles fought long before he traded his naval commission for a diplomat's post. His eyes betrayed little, though inside, tension coiled like a drawn bow. In minutes he would walk into the Convergence Hall, a chamber where the voices of 327 species rose and clashed like storms across a galactic ocean. Humanity had only one seat there. One chair in a vast circle of ancient powers. And today, that single voice would be tested harder than ever. The door peeled open with a whisper, revealing the hall beyond. Elias stepped forward, his boots sinking into a surface that felt alive, almost vascular, a subtle thrum beneath each step. The hall spread out in impossible dimensions, a cathedral suspended in orbit, its ceiling alive with holographic projections of nebulae and starfields. Rows of delegates filled tiered seats, their bodies glimmering with scales, chitin, or luminous membranes. The air itself carried a blend of scents, ozone, musk, sulfur, each species marking their presence. The sound hit him next, layered voices, some like crackling embers, others like wind through stone. They weren't quiet. They weren't respectful. Already, whispers about the human delegation hissed between rows. Primitive ape world. Meat fragile as spun glass. Still drenched in the blood of their own wars. Elias ignored it. He had been warned of this. Humanity was tolerated, not respected. Their invitation to the council had been more experiment than welcome. But still, he walked forward with measured calm, each step even, controlled. At the center rose the Convergence podium, crystalline and multifaceted, catching the starlight in prismatic arcs. Elias placed his hands upon it, feeling the cool bite of alien material under his palms. His chair was empty behind him, but he did not sit. Humans had learned quickly that to stand in this place was to project strength. A chittering ripple swept across the chamber as High Chancellor Zerthal of the Threx Dominion ascended his own platform opposite Elias. The insectid's carapace gleamed obsidian black, legs tapping the floor with sharp, deliberate rhythm. Mandibles clicked as he unfolded a scroll of light, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber in 1,000 fragments. Resolution 8821. Zerthal began, his voice a grinding resonance that carried without amplification. Concerning the unlawful occupation of colonial sectors bordering Threx Dominion territory by the human species of Sol. It is the judgment of this body that the aforementioned colonies be ceded to the Dominion for proper stewardship. Effective immediately. A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded, others hissed assent. None seemed surprised. Elias let the silence hang for a heartbeat before he answered. His voice was steady, calm, with the deliberate cadence of someone who had rehearsed each word. On behalf of Earth and her colonies, I reject Resolution 8821. Our settlements beyond Sol were established lawfully, through exploration and labor. They are homes, not pawns to be traded. A wave of derisive laughter spilled from the tiers. One delegate with translucent skin leaned toward his neighbor, speaking loudly enough for the translation matrix to carry. Homes? The apes think their huts in the dust are homes. Another, feathered and regal, flared her wings and scoffed. They mistake squatting for civilization. Elias didn't flinch. He knew the theater of it, the cruelty meant to rattle him. He answered with measured clarity. Humanity acknowledges the Council's authority, but we will not cede sovereign territory. We have shed too much to build those colonies. Families live there. Children are born there. They will not be displaced. Zerthal's mandibles twitched in amusement. Children, he echoed, dripping venom in the word. Fragile spawn who cannot survive without steel cages around their worlds. You claim sovereignty as though it is not a borrowed robe you wear. Humanity was granted provisional membership. Do not mistake that for permanence. The hall stirred, whispers rising again. Elias kept his hand steady on the podium, but he could feel the bones in his knuckles press white. The Charter recognizes the sovereignty of all members, Elias replied, voice low but firm. You cannot demand we surrender what is ours without violating your own laws. A ripple of clicking laughter surged from the Threx delegation. Others joined, some mocking, some indifferent. A scaled delegate leaned forward, voice carrying across the chamber. Tell me, human, how many of your kind must die this time before you learn obedience? Elias's jaw tightened. He exhaled slowly through his nose, measuring his response. Obedience, he said, each syllable crisp. We are not subjects. We are members. And we will act as such. The hall did not quiet. If anything, the jeers grew bolder. They speak as though equals. Arrogance of the young species. Always the smell of war on their breath. Zerthal leaned forward, mandibles spreading in what passed for a grin. You do not understand, ape. This is not a request. This is survival. You are a spark in a storm. Yield, and perhaps your species may last another century. Refuse, and you will be extinguished before the stars themselves remember you existed. The laughter returned, louder this time, echoing in alien cadences that shook the hall. It rolled over Elias like surf pounding against stone. He stood unmoving, hands locked on the podium, eyes fixed on the Chancellor. For a moment he said nothing. He let them laugh. He let the sound build, let it fill the chamber until the walls seemed to hum with it. Inside, beneath his calm exterior, he felt the old weight stir. The soldier who had watched cities burn in the Jovian rebellions, who had seen comrades buried under steel and fire, who had survived the collapse of airlocks and the silence of the void. The laughter rang in his ears. His reflection in the crystalline podium looked back at him, calm mask intact, but the pressure behind it was building. Zerthal raised his limbs high, signaling for silence. Choose, human, he declared. Submission or obliteration. The hall roared approval. Delegates pounded appendages, wings, and claws against their seats. The sound was deafening, triumphant, certain. But Elias did not sit. He did not bow. His voice, when it came, was quiet enough to cut through the noise. This is not a choice, he said. And though they kept laughing, some turned their eyes back to him. They caught the shift, the flicker in his gaze, the iron buried beneath restraint. The mask was still on. But cracks had begun to show. #### Chapter 2, The Breaking Point. The laughter did not fade quickly. It swelled in layers, hundreds of alien throats producing sounds no human larynx could mimic, trills, hisses, metallic rasping. To most in the chamber, the moment had already concluded. They believed the human was cornered, that his silence was submission. But Elias Veyer did not move. He stood steady at the crystalline podium, eyes fixed on High Chancellor Zerthal. Inside, his discipline was under siege, the soldier in him pacing restlessly behind the diplomat's mask. He thought of his cadets on Ganymede who had died holding a corridor no wider than a breath. He thought of the Terran families planting crops in frozen dust on Kepler 91c, believing in a future they might never live to see. He drew in one slow breath and spoke. You've mistaken silence for surrender. The words, carried through the translation lattice, cut across the chamber. The laughter fractured. Some voices stuttered into silence, others trailed off uncertainly. Zerthal's mandibles froze mid-click, then snapped shut with a clatter. Elias lifted his head slightly, gaze sweeping across the tiers. You mock our colonies. You call them fragile huts in barren soil. But those huts shelter lives, lives we will defend. Do not mistake courtesy for weakness. A ripple of unease stirred. Delegates shifted in their seats, feathers rustled, scaled tails flicked against metal floors. Elias's tone had changed. He was no longer the deferential envoy. There was steel beneath the words now, measured but undeniable. Zerthal leaned forward, his voice low and resonant. Empty defiance. You cannot fight the Dominion, let alone the Council entire. Do you not understand the scale before you? Elias met the Chancellor's gaze without blinking. I understand scale better than you think. I have seen what it costs to hold ground against impossible odds. Humanity has lived that lesson for centuries. We've endured wars that gutted continents. We have stood on the edge of extinction more than once. And we're still here. The chamber fell quieter, though pockets of derision remained. A delegate with ivory tusks sneered, voice booming. So proud of surviving your own savagery. You boast of blood spilled by your own hands as though it grants you dignity. Elias turned slightly, addressing him directly. It grants perspective. We've seen how cruel we can be to ourselves. That is why we tried diplomacy first. That is why we come here with open hands. His voice hardened. But do not think we have forgotten how to close them into fists. The ivory-tusked delegate fell silent. Elias returned his focus to Zerthal. You speak of survival, Chancellor. You threaten us with obliteration as though it is unfamiliar ground. But humanity has lived with that shadow since the first sparks of fire lit our skies. Asteroids, ice ages, plagues, wars, we've walked with extinction so long it no longer frightens us. It has tempered us. He took a step closer to the podium's edge, his voice carrying higher now. Do you think threats can cow us? We've been threatened by our own kind with annihilation. We've built weapons that could erase our world 100 times over, and still we chose to endure, to rebuild, to keep moving forward. Do not mistake patience for fear. If pushed, we will fight. And when we fight, we do not stop. The council chamber shifted. The air itself seemed heavier, as though the walls absorbed his words. Some delegates averted their eyes. Others studied him with renewed interest, calculating. A few leaned forward, listening with the sharp attention given to predators. Zerthal tried to sneer, though there was a hitch in his rhythm. Bravado! That is all I hear. You cloak your desperation in threats, but your fleets are few, your colonies thin. Against us, you are nothing but fuel for the stars. Elias's lips curved faintly, not in humor but in warning. Fuel burns. And when it does, it leaves nothing but fire in its wake. A silence followed that neither side rushed to fill. Elias let it stretch, allowed them to feel it. A delegate with translucent skin finally broke the pause, her voice soft but audible. If humanity is as unyielding as you claim, then why kneel at this chamber at all? Why not fight already? Elias turned his head toward her, voice calm again but edged. Because we would rather build than burn. We would rather plant than kill. We came here believing this council values reason, believing it values choice. But make no mistake, we did not come because we are afraid. We came because we hoped for partnership. If that hope is betrayed, then yes, we will fight. We will not bow. That earned silence. No mocking laughter followed, no chorus of jeers. Delegates exchanged glances, the mood shifting from ridicule to uncertainty. Zerthal broke it with a clattering hiss, mandibles snapping. Enough! This is the desperation of a dying species clinging to defiance. The colonies will be ceded, or they will be taken by force. Your words do not change that. Elias leaned on the podium, voice dropping to a low, steady note that carried through every corner of the chamber. Then understand this clearly, if you come for them, you will not find submission. You will find resistance. You will find humanity fighting with everything it has, not because we believe we can destroy you, but because we will never allow ourselves to be owned. That is who we are. That is what we have always been. He paused, scanning the tiers of delegates, meeting alien gazes unflinching. Do you think you frighten us with talk of extermination? We have lived with that specter since our first days. If it comes, it will not be because we bent our knees. It will be because we stood. And when history remembers this day, it will not recall that we begged for mercy. It will remember that we refused. The chamber was still. Even the wall's luminous patterns seemed to dim, as though listening. The alien murmurs had stilled into watchful silence. Zerthal's mandibles clicked, but no words came immediately. He had expected submission. He had expected the mask of politeness to hold. Instead, he found himself staring at something unyielding, something harder than he anticipated. Elias straightened, the calm mask fully gone now. His voice cut like tempered steel. You wanted to see what lies beneath our courtesy. Now you have. He stepped back from the podium, leaving the silence to settle over the chamber like a weight none could ignore. #### Chapter 3. The day polite mode turned off. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence inside the convergence hall pressed down heavier than the gravity fields holding the chamber in place. Delegates who had laughed minutes ago now sat stiff, their voices caught in throats, wings folded, antennae curling tight against armored hides. The human at the podium had shifted the ground beneath them, and none knew how to reclaim their balance. Elias Veyer did not rush to fill the quiet. He let it hang, forcing every delegate to sit in it, to feel it. He stood tall, shoulders squared, gaze steady, as though daring them to challenge him again. The council was used to deference. It thrived on it. But what filled the chamber now was not deference, it was defiance, stripped of any polite disguise. When Elias finally spoke, his words carried with the sharp clarity of forged steel. You wanted compliance. You demanded surrender. What you have instead is the truth of who we are. Humanity will not kneel. Not today. Not ever. A ripple moved through the chamber, not laughter this time but unease. A delegate with scales the color of molten copper hissed softly, her voice sliding across the translation lattice. You speak as though you welcome war. You cannot hope to stand against the council's fleets. Elias's reply came without hesitation. We do not welcome war. We despise it. But if you bring it to us, we will endure it. And we will make you regret every life you force us to take. We may be few compared to you, but we fight with the knowledge that losing everything has never stopped us before. It has only hardened us. He let his words strike like blows, deliberate and unflinching. We rebuilt after burning our own cities to ash. We rebuilt after poisoned skies and oceans choked with death. We rebuilt when our planet turned against us. Every time, we came back stronger. You think to frighten us with the threat of destruction? That is a language we already speak. The chamber's luminous walls flickered, their patterns dimming, as though the hall itself recoiled. A dozen delegates shifted uncomfortably. Zerthal's mandibles clattered, but for once, his interruption came late, hesitant. Your arrogance blinds you. Do you think survival alone makes you formidable? You are still outnumbered. Still outmatched. Elias turned his gaze directly on the Chancellor, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command. Numbers don't decide survival. Resolve does. Determination does. When extinction stares us in the face, we do not break. We adapt. We fight until there is nothing left to give. That is why you should fear us. Because we are not afraid of dying, only of bowing. A feathered delegate leaned forward, her eyes sharp, tone measured. You risk everything by saying this here. Do you realize what you've done? I do, Elias answered simply. I've given you clarity. You no longer need to guess where humanity stands. We are here to cooperate, not to submit. Treat us as equals, and you'll find us steadfast allies. But if you press us, if you try to take from us, then you will see what happens when our patience ends. The chamber was utterly still. Even those who despised humanity did not interrupt. Some stared as though seeing the species for the first time. Others looked at Zerthal, gauging his reaction. The Chancellor's carapace twitched, and though he tried to keep his mandibles firm, there was a subtle hesitation in the clatter, an almost imperceptible fracture in the mask of dominance he had worn. Elias straightened, his voice carrying the final weight of the moment. You demanded submission. Instead, you've awakened something else. You've seen our mask slip. Remember this day, because from now on you will never hear our courtesy without knowing what stands behind it. He let the silence seal the statement. No one laughed now. No one jeered. Delegates who had mocked humanity minutes earlier shifted uncomfortably, their postures shrinking back. Others sat rigid, trying to measure whether the human's words were bluff or truth. The silence was the answer. They had seen conviction, not theater. Zerthal finally rasped, mandibles scraping together in agitation. This display will be remembered. Do not believe the council will let such insolence pass unchallenged. Elias tilted his head slightly, his expression steady, unyielding. Good. Remember it. That was the point. He stepped back from the podium, the crystalline surface releasing his palms with a faint hum. The chamber's gaze followed him as he turned, the single human figure walking calmly toward the exit doors. No guards escorted him, none dared approach. The weight of his words lingered, heavy in the stale air, louder than the laughter that had filled the hall earlier. The doors parted silently, and he stepped into the corridor beyond. The alien light dimmed behind him as the chamber sealed shut, leaving the council to wrestle with what had just transpired. Elias walked with measured steps, his pulse steady now, though he knew the storm was only beginning. Perhaps Earth would pay dearly for what he had said. Perhaps the Threx Dominion would push harder, unwilling to let defiance go unpunished. But he had given his people what they needed most: dignity. No colony would hear that humanity had bowed. No child born under alien stars would believe their future had been bargained away. As he reached the waiting chamber, Elias let himself breathe. He touched the edge of the obsidian glass once more, the faint reflection staring back at him. For the first time in years he saw no diplomat's mask there. Only a soldier who had chosen to fight in a new kind of war. Behind him, the council remained silent, its members still weighing what humanity truly was. The laughter was gone. Respect had not yet come, but fear had, and that was enough. The day humanity's polite mask came off would be remembered, not as the day Earth begged for survival, but as the day the galaxy learned it could no longer laugh at them without consequence.